Hello, everyone. So we're going to talk about the transformative light postings, the research that all of you put up a day or so ago, and kind of get into a little bit about what I'm seeing as patterns from pretty much all of you, but also some particulars that may come up as we're looking there. What's important here is that we understand that this project, this transformative light project, is where you will have this opportunity to begin defining or begin outlining what your photography is about. If photography is light and you're making images about light, then that is your imagery. That is something that only you can do. All of the other exercises, the frameworks, the compositional strategies, the repetition and rhythm, those things are principles. Those things are structures that are universal. These are things that we use all the time in a facile way. In other words, in a way that is almost subconscious. We're not necessarily wanting to be thinking about all of these structures. They're just there for us to draw upon when we need them, much like grammar is not what I'm thinking about when I'm forming sentences as I talk. I'm not necessarily having to say, well, I better put a verb in this sentence, otherwise it won't make any sense to anybody. But when we're learning the visual language and we're creating that kind of individuality for us, we are having to learn some of those structures. And when we were learning any language, we were learning that you have to sort of conform to certain things. The words that you use in a language, of spoken language, those are words that you adopt. You bring on certain words. The word apple is a word that you didn't invent, but you identify the apple to this fruit that you can see and that everyone else identifies the same thing as being an apple. That's what we're talking about when we say universal sort of principles or universally identifiable elements. But when it comes to how we approach light, when we're talking about photography, that's more about like your handwriting, if we want to say it like that, more about the way in which you form the words. You know, the flourishes or the non-flourishes, if you want to call it that, because, you know, if writing, the actual like penmanship or whatnot, is your individual way to form letters, then how you're working with light is your individual photographic penmanship, I guess, your calligraphy, if you want to call it that. And so this is a very important introduction, and so we don't want to overstate it, but we also don't want to let this project just sort of happen and then we move through it. I really want to offer this as a marking post for you in terms of realizing where photography might be in the hierarchy of your creative making process. Some of you will move forward with wanting to study photography and filmmaking, which is a sort of sibling or cousin of photography, and others will continue to use photography in other ways, maybe as a supplement or an enrichment to another form of expression and those types of things. But irregardless, you're going to be identifying photography in some way, working in the creative field, in today's community, in today's world. That's just how things are. Photography is present everywhere. Moving forward, let's take a look at some of the postings. Now, I don't mean to be going over every single posting here. That's not what I'm intending to do. And so let's take a look at a few of these. Just to give some highlights. I just pulled up, actually quite randomly, several of these postings. I just kind of went down the line and clicked on several of these so that I could easily pull them up. And we're just going to kind of work through a few of them just to offer some observations and some feedback. This research, where you're going back and looking at your own imagery, is a very important thing. In many ways, what we're doing is we are trying to recognize our own patterns, our own rhythms, the things that we're already doing, perhaps on a intuitive level, perhaps on a level where it's just natural for us to be approaching certain things in a particular way. So we want to recognize some of those patterns, whether we're very much interested in leading lines, or we're very much interested in shape, or there's a sort of color dynamic that we work with, or there's a certain perspective or point of view that we work with very specifically. If you look at Paige's work here, as she goes through, and these are small, and again, I haven't ever identified why exactly some of these postings wind up being small. And it's a shame, because I think there's some details in her work that we're not being able to see. But I want to just basically highlight just something here, and that is, if you notice in these images that she's chosen, and if you were to look back in a lot of the work that she has, a lot of the ground is quite evident in most of her photographs, meaning the earth, the ground here. She uses that quite a bit in the compositions that she chooses, oftentimes allowing it to take up almost 2/3 of the photograph. Now, there are a few things here light-wise that we can talk about. Of course, acknowledging that we have a very heavy use of this shadow as a compositional element. There's a direct sort of reflective element going on here, in terms of this sort of hourglass kind of effect that's happening, where we get the large and then it funnels through this thin area and then goes back out to the large. Also, this is an anomaly. This is an aberration that happens when the lens is receiving light that it cannot arrange. It's scattered light that is sort of affecting the lens, and it can't really do anything with it. It's sort of a lens flare, if you want to call it that. You don't see them as often today in lenses, because modern lenses have multiple coatings and multiple elements inside that little case there that correct for this kind of thing. But a good time ago, there was a lot more of this, and it was used into great effect. So, but you're seeing this in her imagery a couple of times. Here we're seeing it again, where it's sort of this softened haze, and that has to do with her equipment. That has to do with the lens that she has is picking up on those things. Now, it's not necessarily something you want to do all the time, because it can, over a long period of time, damage the lens and the sensor inside your camera. But using it effectively, using this sort of aberration effectively, is in fact commenting on the way that light works. Light doesn't bend on this planet. Gravity isn't strong enough to pull light and bend it. When we get close to the gravity of the sun, it will bend light. We discovered this during I think it was maybe it was Einstein who discovered that during a solar eclipse, where we were able to see stars that existed behind the sun during a solar eclipse because the light would bend around it. So anyway, on this planet, light doesn't bend. It only goes in straight lines and it reflects. And so this gives you that nature of it. That's why it has this flare, is because it is reflecting, it's bouncing around, and the light that can't be controlled through the aperture is bouncing around in there and causing that aberration. So that's one way of doing it. Also, she's presenting these times of day. There's that light flare again. She's presenting these things during a midday situation. Very short shadows. The sun has a very particular sort of look to it. And so that's something to consider as well. Time of day is always going to be a very important factor to you. Exploring over multiple times of day is going to be very important in this project, because remember, we're not talking about just light. We're talking about transformative light, how light changes what we're looking at. This isn't not just a statement. We're not trying to make necessarily a definitive statement about light here. This project and pretty much all of the experiments in this course are about exploration. This course is not about making you masters at these techniques and all of these things. This is not about getting to the end of a topic. This is really about introducing a variety of things that we can begin to explore, that we want to then take we want to take with us to the next level. That's where we get the more individuality, and that's where we get the more of the intentions moving forward. This is the foundation from which we build, and here we want to do a whole lot of exploration, a whole lot of questions. So transformative light is really about, how is light available to me, and what kinds of different situations can I explore at various times of day, perhaps even in a very limited location, your backyard, or the atrium here, or the courtyard, all kinds of different locations. You can limit it pretty tightly, not the same compositions, mind you. You don't want to repeat photographs. We've mentioned this several times in our video reviews, but exploring the area and how light is transforming it based on where it's coming from, what time of day, the intensity of it, and all those kinds of things. So explore. It's what we always want to be doing. Here, Caitlin's work is quite beautiful, quite well organized. She's very, very particular about where things are placed in the composition. She uses the structure of the golden ratio, and she uses the structure of the phi grid and the patterns of color and things like this in a really excellent way. Light that she's using really tends to be more formal in terms of using it in a shape-based form. So you can see here as a shadow that's being really cut right into it. Here we have it using as shadow and pattern back and forth and back and forth. Here it's used a little bit less. We are getting a little bit of that flare going on here. This would have been one of the first projects, so I think maybe we were exploring quite a bit. Reflection. Reflections are gonna change. This reflection down here in the water, this will change dramatically depending on the angle and the intensity of the light source, sun. Sun is our key light. We'll give it that name. It's a key light. You're gonna hear that, those of you that join me in the creative lighting class in the fall. Key lighting, the key light is the main light source. And when we're outside, the sun is always the key light source. There is no brighter light source than the sun. So when the light is in a different situation and we have something like this, those reflections that we're seeing right now will change dramatically. The intensity of the shadows will change dramatically over that time. So pay very close attention to that type of thing. Here we have objects cast shadow that we're working here with. Again, lots of shape. This is what we would call golden hour, or dusk or dawn, or not dusk or dawn. Yeah, dusk or dawn. This is a very fleeting light that we're working with here. Notice how warm it is. This warmth is, in a way, telling me where the angle is from, and just how much water vapor, or how little water vapor, is in the atmosphere. There's a lot of water in the air. The temperature of the light is going to be a little cooler than if it's a very dry air. But using, again, this is a very excellent use. Again, I don't know why these images are so small like this, but it's a very excellent use of using darkness, not necessarily cast shadows, but using the lights and the darks as a way of breaking up the space and defining different planes of the image. So we have the foreground here that is in the shadow. We have the middle ground here, which is being lit very brightly. And then we have the background, which is what we would consider to be just reflected light. There's no light. Actually, the sun isn't back there. It's just reflecting off of the atmosphere, which is the sky back there. Here we have more in line with what I was talking about with Paige's work, where it's using the shadows and using the shapes as a form of the composition. You'll notice that going on and on with a lot of these, with Cambria's here, where she's using that as well. Patterns, setting up patterns with light. These are all really excellent examples with how light is transforming the space. The real question we want to ask ourselves, you want to ask yourself, is you've identified these. You probably weren't thinking about light as intensively as I'm asking you to for this project. Well, here's the question that I want you to kind of think about. So you have these examples, you've identified them. So are you going to go in these directions? So it doesn't necessarily mean that you've identified these, that you have to pick one of these, that you have to choose this particular thing. This is more about identifying things you have been doing, so that you know and realize you've already been doing this project. That's part of what I want you to realize, and so that you are empowered, have confidence moving into this. It may seem rather daunting and abstract when I say, go make pictures about light. It'd be the same thing maybe if your drawing instructor said, oh, I want you to make a drawing where it's about how charcoal transforms the paper. That might be like, what? How, what are you even talking about? And so here I am talking about, go make photographs that are all about how light is transforming the space there. That might sound very abstract. And so, I'm very deliberate about having you go back and look at these photographs you've already made and identified what you, not me, but what you are seeing as this is light transforming the space. And there are images that you have made so that you can identify already, hey, I've been doing this already. It's not something I haven't been working on. This is something you've already done. Now, it really comes down to, what do I do now? Do I want to continue with some of these patterns that I've been doing already? Do I want to re-explore one of them? Or do I want to move into some different direction? Let me look at some of the other students, some of my peers' work, see what they've done. I showed you a lot of things that I've been working on, and that might have pushed you or influenced you in one way or another, confused you maybe, but hopefully gave you some idea of some of the extreme levels that you can go to, because you can do all sorts of really sort of non-traditional photography. Is it even what we would consider photography when we have no subject, very little focus, and it's really just about light? I would say it's more a photograph that way, because you are getting to the heart of what photography really is. So here with her, she's working with patterns of light, these very soft shadows versus very hard shadows here. This is all very excellent work, right? All of these are representing some of the best work that you have made during the semester. This photograph that Jasmine made is a very successful image of our courtyard, of the plaza there. Why? Why is this a very interesting and dynamic image of basically, a prison yard? It kind of reminds me of that a little bit until we get to, I guess, School of Creativity and Practice, aesthetic out there. It's going to look a little sparse, but anyway, the light has transformed this. You have this sort of light that is, cascading across it. You have this beautiful sort of direction that's happening there, the warmth, the shadows. I almost forget about what the place is. I'm just looking at the colors and the interactions that go on there. It's quite extraordinary when that happens. We even have this kind of imagery, which wouldn't happen if we didn't have light. The self-portrait through the reflections and those types of things. It just occurred to me, how is the selfie experiment influencing you? We're working on that simultaneously now. You're working through a lot of those. How is that going to influence what you're doing? So a lot of these are, are a repeat because you guys are, working in a lot of the same directions. This is very unique, something that Paige has put up. This is again, we got a little bit of the lens flare going on right here where we have that cascading light. But here the transformative light is really about the atmosphere. This is all reflected light. You do have the light source back here, which you can see, but what she's got going on here, because these clouds are basically diffusing the light, everything else is just reflected light. No light is hitting any of these surfaces really. I mean, in some cases, you can see a little bit of it here and here, but really most of what's happening here is light is being reflected, not directly hitting stuff. And so that's a whole nother way to approach this kind of thing. So I do have a couple more here, but I think you guys are maybe getting the point. I don't want this video to go on extremely long. Wow, this is extraordinary, Sadie. This is really a beautiful photograph. I mentioned these when in our other videos here, but this is just wonderful way of referring to things that we don't see within the photograph. It's outside of our frame of view, but now we see it. We're getting the best of both worlds. We're getting that wonderful overlap and texture, while at the same time, we're getting the rest of this scene. It sets this atmosphere that otherwise would be extremely difficult to do. We could draw this, but it doesn't have the same impact that a photograph has. I think I probably would have mentioned that we don't needed this business up here, that if the image kind of ended right up here, it would have been an improvement. But these things are just wonderful. The increased contrast that we're getting on images like this, the intensity and the deep richness that happens in these that Celia has done. This is really interesting stuff that I'm very much excited to see how you take this to another level. I don't want you to repeat what you're doing. That wasn't the point of you going back and looking at the imagery. What I wanted this to do is give you a springboard to move forward. And so that's really where I want you to be going with this. So hopefully that was helpful. This was what I intended to do before I had that day out. I regret having to miss that day, but hopefully this will serve as an effective substitute. You can go back and listen to me talking throughout this video back and forth if something was missing there. We'll have our individual meetings next week. Don't forget to go to Blackboard and jump on the Calendly link that is up there. You can also check your email because I sent that announcement through your email as well. for that link to set up a time for that meetup where we'll talk specifically about your lighting progress, so that, again, you get some really important feedback, observations from me. And the intent here is not to tell you what's right or wrong. The intent is to help you through my experience to make observations. That's what I'm trying to do here. I don't want you to feel that I'm telling you how to make photographs. I can help you discover how you make photographs. That's what I'm doing here. That is my intention. Know that is what I want for you. If you're ever wondering about, my methodology and the way in which I go about giving you feedback and the way in which I go about offering you things like grades, in fact, that is something that we will discuss in our individual meetings. We'll talk about your progress in the class and where everybody stands. I know that's probably a question everybody has. And I want you to not be thinking about that. I want you to be focusing more on your progress and work. So it's a very deliberate choice to be sort of getting you to focus more on feedback and progress in your photography. But of course, you're gonna want to know where you are as far as that. So we will cover that as part of our individual meetings. So any of you that have those questions, will certainly cover that. I will be posting the rest of the feedback for the NOTAN that we worked on. And I'll also work on another video for the after photographs that you guys put up as responses to those NOTAN photographs. So I wish you all well, and we will see you next week. Bye now.